This episode of Murky Sebs Wild Underwater Adventures is brought to you by Angling New South Wales. Link in video description. It's our third day in Girraween National Park, and we haven't had much luck so far. The rivers are all much higher and flowing much quicker than I was expecting them to be. Normally this time of year there hasn't been anywhere near as much rain, and the rivers would all be low and the fish would be confined to smaller pools. But with the rivers flowing this quickly, it means that the fish are way more spread out and much harder to find. I'm really hoping that we can find some of the blackfish and whatever else is living here. But it's not looking too good. And as you can see, it's all overcast at the moment. It rained in the night, so that's also going to make the visibility and height of the rivers bad. But we'll keep looking and hopefully find something living in the rivers. There's a lot of sitting around and looking in the rivers and just waiting and hoping that a blackfish will swim by, as they're not the most active fish, but occasionally they'll dart around, and it takes a lot of waiting to be able to find one. This is exactly the sort of area that the blackfish would find appealing. It's slow moving eddies where next to the main current, so any food getting washed down will get pushed over into this area where the blackfish will be able to not use as much energy having to swim in the main current. They can just hang out in the side bit here and then get all the food that flows downstream. There's lots of insects here as well, which makes up the majority of their diet. I'm going to keep watching and hopefully find some. Having a look under the water surface, there wasn't any sign of the blackfish, but I just had a feeling that this was the perfect spot to find them. We will have to come back here later and see what we can find. After the clouds cleared, it became such a beautiful morning in Girraween National Park. I loved hearing the occasional birds singing and the insects off in the distance. In order to find fish and crayfish, sometimes it helps to think, if I was a crayfish or fish, where would I like to hide? And I'm fairly sure this area behind me is where I'd like to hide if I was a fish or crayfish. So let's see if there's any fish or crayfish that think like me. After waiting a few hours, still I found nothing in the pool that I thought was perfect for the blackfish. So I decided I'd go further upstream and look in a different nearby creek. I'm really glad that I chose to do this, because this was where I got my first glimpse at a slender fish that fit the description of the blackfish. But I couldn't tell at first what they were until they swam a bit closer to my camera, and they didn't seem too bothered with me being there. This was, in fact, the blackfish that I'd come here to find. They even seemed to come in closer and investigate my camera. Don't they blend in perfectly with their environment, with their mottled dark green and light yellow pattern going along their body, which is almost identical to the riverbed? The blackfish can vary a bit in colour depending on where the population is found. They basically try and blend in as well as they can with their surrounding environment. And here, it's kind of a yellowish green colour. I was feeling very good after getting a look at the fish that I came here to find. But I knew that they grew much larger than this, and I wanted to see if there were more blackfish in Girraween's rivers. I also wanted to see if I could find one that's fully grown. So I followed this path across the river and had a good look around. It's such a beautiful place. I wish that I could live here. Whilst looking for the blackfish, I saw this lizard zoom across the rock in front of me. It's a bit hard to see what species it is, but from its long black stripe, I'm assuming it's the eastern water skink, which are quite common along Australia's east coast. I didn't get any closer because I didn't want them to be startled and potentially jump in the river, so I left them be and kept exploring this area. I found very few plants in the creeks of Girraween, but I did see this small patch of plants which I didn't recognise. They appear to be some kind of water lily, but I don't know which species. Leave a comment if you're familiar with what they are. Although there were plenty of terrestrial plants, and in fact Girraween is an Aboriginal word meaning the place of flowers. I'm not sure why there weren't more aquatic plants. Possibly it's due to how cold it gets here. The water will freeze over, or maybe there's some other factor that I haven't yet thought of. I had a good look around this rocky terrain. It was amazing seeing all the trees that had grown out of the rock, using the crushed granite sand as a substrate to anchor their roots to. The water is flowing much faster than usual. It's also a lot higher than usual due to all this recent rain. I still had a look in the water to see what was living in here. It was very murky from the surface, so I couldn't see what I was filming, but in this little crevice, a big blackfish had made their home and came out to investigate what I was doing in their space. The blackfish love to hide under rocks, logs, and plants, but can also get very, very active like these ones, which were just a few meters away. They were eating either bits of food stuck in the algae or bits of algae itself. Their large eyes indicate they are most likely predators, and from what I've read, they will eat fish, crayfish, and insects, but I didn't see any mention of them eating algae, although I did film several different blackfish either eating algae or food trapped in the algae. Walking further downstream, I saw a kangaroo shoot off into the distance. Well, it's our last day in Girraween National Park and I'm so pleased with this trip. The areas have just been spectacular. There's really nowhere else that compares to this area in terms of how unique and beautiful it is. I've really enjoyed just seeing all of the scenery, even if there wasn't that many creatures living here. And I've also found these interesting. These little spiders that wrap leaves around themselves. You see the spider in there? It's pretty cool. Even the spiders have got their own little sleeping bags. It's actually very remote out here, and all kinds of animals live in Girraween National Park, from kangaroos to wild pigs to dingoes to wild dogs and countless other species. It's best not to be by yourself in an area like this. Sunrise in this amazing area was such a beautiful time to be up, mostly because there weren't any other humans around, and that meant there were more animals out and about. Each morning I get up just before sunrise and come down to the river to try and make the most of my time here, and hopefully see the fish that I'm looking for. That's not a good sound. I just heard what sounded like some dingoes. Hopefully they aren't interested in me. Each morning the unique plants of Girraween get covered in dewdrops, which give the area a mystical quality. On this morning, I decided to recheck the spot I'd assumed would be perfect for the blackfish. I hadn't seen them here up until now, but I just knew they had to be here. And it turned out that I was right. In this tiny spot, I counted over 20 different blackfish. I love seeing them open up their huge bony mouths. This blackfish is busy chomping away on the algae, either to eat the food that's trapped in it or the algae itself. Being right next to some rapids, any insects or other bits of food would easily get pushed into this slower moving section of the river where the blackfish were all hanging out. I've read blackfish are mostly active at night and are ambush predators, so I was surprised to see so many of them active during this time of day. The blackfish have a huge range, all the way from Girraween and its surrounding areas down through New South Wales to central Victoria and South Australia, and they're even found in Tasmania. The blackfish are split into several different populations, often referred to as the Southern River blackfish, the Northern River blackfish, and the two-spined blackfish. But unfortunately their numbers in recent years have greatly declined, and it's very rare that you'll be able to see them throughout most of what used to be their home. They have declined so drastically for many reasons, almost all as a result of humans. Unfortunately, our government has been actively trying to kill as many blackfish as possible through their idiotic decision to introduce invasive trout into the blackfish's home, which eat the blackfish, eat their eggs, and outcompete them for food. I find it incredible that our government is so determined to make these beautiful fish go extinct. What they have against the blackfish, I don't know, but the blackfish definitely deserve better. They have even become extinct in many of the rivers that they called home for hundreds of thousands of years. They are very slow growing and live for a really long time. Some of the southern blackfish can live to be over 30 years old and weigh up to 5.5 kilograms, with a northern blackfish like these ones only getting to about half that size. Recreational fishermen are also responsible for how few blackfish are still alive, as they are often severely damaged when caught and also killed to be eaten, despite them having what I've heard referred to as a slimy, overly sweet, rotten flesh flavour and off-putting texture. I don't know why anyone would want that, but people do. But another significant reason for their decline is the destruction of their habitat, mostly from our farmers, who divert rivers, take water away from rivers, and pollute rivers with dangerous chemicals and their livestock like cows and sheep. The northern blackfish's habitat is literally a few small rivers near Girraween, and all of those rivers, the water quality has been getting increasingly worse. Blackfish lay up to 1,000 eggs under sunken logs or rocks in late spring, and the male will guard the eggs to ensure nothing can get anywhere near them until they hatch. They are unique compared to their cousins like the Murky cod, in that when the blackfish have just hatched, they keep tethered to their egg sac until all the yolk has been eaten. Then they will go off to see what else they can find to snack on. It's interesting with the blackfish, they seem to hang out in groups right near the fast-flowing water, but they'll be off to the side where it's a bit slower moving. And from what I've seen so far, there'll be one really big blackfish, and then a bunch of medium-sized ones, and then a few really tiny ones all swimming together. It's like they're almost in a big family group. And from what I've seen, it looks like they eat little things that get caught in the algae, if not the algae itself, right next to the current, because the algae is perfect for trapping little bits of food that float downstream. Hopefully we can see some more of them. I think they're really cool fish. There isn't much information publicly available on the blackfish, especially not the Queensland variety, and I'm really glad I got to get out and document these unique creatures. I've never seen any footage of them in this area before, and I've never seen any footage of them behaving like these ones. In most of the footage I have seen, there's usually some kind of bait that's been used to lure them in, but I wanted to see how the blackfish behave as naturally as possible. And I'm really happy to be able to share this encounter with all of you. These fish were so inquisitive and curious with me, always coming up close to check out my camera and flash their fins in front of it. I love this time I got to spend with the blackfish. They're so unique and special, and this is one of the only places in Queensland where they're still found. I really hope their numbers will recover one day, and more people can get to meet these incredible fish like I did. I spent almost a week in Girraween and the surrounding areas, looking at every creek I could find just to get a glimpse at a blackfish in the wild. I thought if I could find even one of these incredible creatures, the whole journey would be worthwhile. I never imagined I'd encounter so many blackfish in one place. The odds were definitely against me on this trip, with all the rain that had occurred, and I'd only read that the blackfish live in this area. So to be able to get out and document so many of them was a really rewarding experience. And thankfully, the park rangers at Girraween do make an effort to look out for the blackfish and stop people from trying to kill these amazing creatures. Girraween is a sanctuary to the blackfish, but it has had many problems in recent years, from fires to invasive species. I was just having a word with one of the rangers. They came up to me because obviously with my long pole it looked like I was trying to catch fish, and obviously it's bad and not allowed to fish in national parks. But once the ranger saw that I was just filming, they were able to tell me some really interesting information about this area. And there was a really bad drought back in 2019, along with some bushfires, and normally even when there's a drought, behind me the water will flow a little bit, but in 2019 it wasn't flowing, and the fish numbers obviously would have reduced because of that. And the area we passed earlier between the waterhole and the underground creek was totally burnt out, and the riverbed was almost completely dried up. There was just a few pools of water along the way where maybe some fish might have survived, maybe a few crayfish. So that would explain why I wasn't able to find any when I was looking in that river earlier. Something else that was really interesting, but also really bad, is that there were, and possibly still are, goldfish in this national park. And this is a really remote national park. There's not many properties nearby, so someone must have, someone did deliberately release some goldfish into this river, and they basically took over. But the rangers and other people at the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service managed to get rid of most of them, and thankfully I haven't noticed any, so hopefully they have got rid of all the goldfish, and just the blackfish and the crayfish will be able to thrive once again. That would explain why we're not seeing any crayfish, because I imagine the goldfish would have been eating the baby ones, and they take so long to grow, and they don't breed very often as well. It's very interesting. I'm really glad to have met that ranger and learnt all that information about this area. I can't believe we managed to find the galaxis, the blackfish, and the crayfish. I was told that we wouldn't be able to find the blackfish here, but we managed to. It's been such an awesome journey, seeing all of this beautiful landscape and seeing all the cool creatures. And I didn't manage to get all the cool creatures I saw on film because some of them were very fast moving. But we managed to get the main ones that I came here for. It's been such an awesome journey. And it wouldn't have been possible without Angler New South Wales. So make sure to head over to their site and check them out because they're a really cool organisation. I hope you enjoyed learning about all of these cool creatures and seeing the environments they call home. And until next time, keep it murky.